located?
So I'm in Melbourne, Australia.
Oh, wow. Okay. I haven't done one from Melbourne yet.
Yeah. The podcast game is kind of slow here, so we're trying to take hold of it over here.
Right
Um,
on.
have you been to Australia before?
I have not. No.
That's interesting because I mean our punk scene's okay at the moment. But the punk scene, I guess, in the 80s and 90s would have been pretty interesting here. Hey.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I've shipped a couple books to Australia.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
True.
Yeah.
That's
Never
awesome. Yeah,
never been there.
the shipping must have been heaps.
Oh man, it was awful. These guys like really wanted my book. I felt bad.
Yeah. Well, we need all the culture we can get over here. Um,
Yeah.
I wanted to start off by asking a pretty broad question. Just what you look for in a great photograph.
Well, yeah, this is going to sound cliche, but I like telling a story. I consider myself a portrait photographer. I know that sounds kind of weird for, live music, but I like to like capture the essence of a person with, a story behind it. And, the story is the person and where they're at is part of, you know, what the artwork looks like. So it's a guy at a microphone, what's going on around him, people on stage. Like I want to have people be in the photo, to experience the energy of what I'm trying to capture. That's what I look for. Something a good photograph to me it evokes a feeling. Now, the feeling could be good, the feeling can be bad, but just something other than meh. You know,
For sure. Because it doesn't matter, right? If the feeling's good or bad, because that's kind of irrelevant. The important thing is to feel.
right? I mean, you could look at a photo and go, ah, but that's something, So
Yeah, for sure. That's cool that you're trying to get people immersed in it, you know? And I think it's so important now because of how much, and some things, I mean, I was never around. I'm 28. I was never around for what you experienced. But I wish I was pretty much because I play in a punk rock band. So like for me, it's
right on.
like, you guys actually were there. Like we don't, my contemporaries have nothing on that scene. So it's cool that you're bringing people right there to like the forefront of it as well. Are you someone who shoots more or shoots less?
Well, what do you mean by shoots more or shoots less?
So somebody, I guess there's a lot of photographers who only really shoot what they're going to put out. And then there's other people who
Ah,
take 1,000 photos and then
oh,
curate it
spray
later.
and pray.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, that's
well,
the
spray and pray. The thing is, you have to look at. I mean, I've been shooting photographs since 1981 when I was 15. So, I got a few miles under the hood here. And when in the old days of photography, it's one image, one shot. You focus the picture. You know you take the picture. You may have a motor drive or an auto winder, which, if you're lucky, maybe 6 frames a second or whatever, but it's still a pretty manual process. The camera that I used in the majority of my archive is not just a single shot camera. It's a completely manual camera. So every time you take a picture, certain things need to happen. Besides the focusing, you have to meter it to make sure the lighting is correct. You have to compose the picture. So you're going through a number of calculations in your mind while all hell is breaking loose around you. So the option to spray and pray did not exist. And that's how I came of age in photography is one shot, one focus, one frame, and it better be good. And you don't get to see it then and there. There's no CCD where you're looking at it on the monitor going, oh, I missed that. You then
Yeah.
had to go and process the film, and hopefully you got something. So it was a very analog and not instant process.
For sure. It seems like when that happens, there's a lot more kind of writing on it. Like I've spoken to, and it's not the same thing, but I've spoken to artists who don't, do like pencil drawings beforehand. So whatever they put on the paper is the final outcome. And it's the same, right? With what you're doing. Like whether it's good or bad, like you only get one chance to really capture that from that angle.
Well, there's also another thing too. Unlike a digital capture, where I can take my camera now, I shoot with a Nikon ZF, and I can do the burst, like 500 frames in a split second, where it's basically looks like a video at this point if you run all the
Yeah,
frames
yeah, it
together.
is a
I
video.
mean,
Yeah,
yeah, I could do that, but I don't, because that's not the way I take pictures. I mean, I have my fancy new rig, but I doing one picture, one focus, one image, because that's what I know and that's what I'm comfortable with. Also, back in the day, the other thing to keep in mind is film was expensive, and the chemistry to process it was also expensive. And as a student, didn't have a lot of money. So I had to also ration the amount of frames that I shot per band. Sometimes if a band was playing, I would, and I had a roll of film for a show. And if there's 4 bands playing and I got a roll of film, they're not going to have a lot of shots per band on that roll of film.
yeah,
And
yeah.
so the idea of, I shot 7,000 images last night didn't exist.
Yeah. It's interesting what you said about having lots of bands on the bill and limited like shooting roles, because like the same thing happens here as well. We'll have like a 5 band bill or a 6 band bill, and you just prioritize the band you like, right?
Right. And unfortunately, like you could probably, if you're shooting film, now if I'm shooting digital, doesn't matter. I could take, thousands of pictures of every band on the bill, because I don't have to worry about processing film. I just have to worry about ask time when I get home to go through them all. But it's, now I guess the idea of, am I going to shoot the opening band, or am I
Mhm.
going to just shoot the headlining band is not part of the equation. I could shoot everything. I don't have to forego the opening band. And when I was shooting years ago, I still shot the opening bands regardless who they were, and I got some great bands who became famous later on that way. It was like they opened for somebody and then eventually they became headliners.
Yeah, you never really know, right?
You never know what's going to happen. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's wild because of how like I guess historic a lot of the bands like I go through your like catalog, and like I've seen your book, and it's just like all these bands like I know and I respect, and it's interesting to think now at like the roster of bands here, for example, in Melbourne, it's like I don't really have that same feeling, but maybe some of them will go on to make some amazing things. But I think that's also I've heard people speak about sort of the death of culture in like a mainstream way as like a concept now, and so maybe that's just what's going on there. I'm not too sure. I want to be optimistic.
Well, yeah, I try to be optimistic. I mean, there is a sort of a death of culture when you think of people don't have to work for anything. There's like the instant gratification. There is something beautiful about cultivating something and growing something, and building it instead of instant gratification of, I mean, this background on my Zoom background here, this is AI. I professionally, I work from home, and it's kind of a game that I do is every day I have a different background so people don't have to look at my office,
Yeah,
behind
yeah,
me. So I do this, but this is not, a brilliantly lit, well laid out photograph. This is my hands on a keyboard telling me to, you know, create a gothic inspired living room.
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah,
mean,
yeah.
but it's instant gratification. In the days where, in real estate photographers would come in and they'd set up and they'd light everything and they'd get everything together, and you'd have this beautifully lit, photo for a magazine that took hours to set up and about 2 seconds to shoot. Now
Yeah.
that's all gone. So in a lot of respects, there is a death of culture because everything is expected to be instantaneous.
I'm sure like the word itself, and I didn't do Latin or anything, but culture, maybe that like to cultivate, maybe there is something to do with, a period of time taking place. In the roots of that word, I don't know anything about it, but it is interesting to think of culture as something that takes time to maybe even like germinate or to cultivate, and like I guess yeah, like I know people who put out songs every day, or every few days, and honestly it loses the appeal because to me it reads as demos. But when you sit with something for a long enough time, like we're working on an album now, our second album, and I don't really care how long it takes to release, and I don't really care who sees it, because ultimately if you enjoy it, it takes the time that it needs to take to get done, basically.
And you
But
play
yeah,
bass, right?
No, no, I do vocals.
Well, I see your guitar behind you.
Yeah, yeah,
See,
yeah.
if you had a Zoom background, I wouldn't be able to see in
No, I need to
your
sell that
room. Or
actually. If you know anyone that wants to buy a bass, a beginner bass, I'll sell it to them.
yeah.
Yeah, I read you say in an article that you can if I'm misquoting you, let me know. But like the idea that it's about the photos, not the photographer. I thought that was really interesting. The idea of do you think the idea of like a rock star photographer where the personality kind of gets in the way is a disservice to the art in any way?
I think I think it's a disservice to the people around them, actually. I mean, I'm not the story. My photos are the story.
Yeah.
And, I don't ever want to be in the position where, people look at me and not the work. I mean, as a woman photographer in punk rock, being a minority at the time, I didn't want people to look at me. I wanted people to see my pictures. So it's always been for me about the work, not about me personally. And
Mm.
even like, famous photographers that have like a cult of personality around them, it's like, I don't care. I don't care who you are. I just want to look at your pictures. I mean, if you have a compelling story, that's great. You write it down, but I don't really gravitate to, you know, a photographer like a rock star, like, oh my God, I mean, if I ran into Pete Souza, at a restaurant, I'd probably say, I really like your work, but I wouldn't be like, oh my God, fan person here. I'd be like, great work. Love
That's
your shots
really
of Obama.
That's really like interesting to hear. I think now, like for me, you're right. Like you're totally right. But I also feel like sometimes, when it comes to like if I see a Vice interview, for example, obviously this is speaking about the idea of like a podcaster or an interviewer being a rock star, right? Which is a new kind of relatively new concept, sort of, because there have been like rock star, Rolling Stone. I can't remember his name, but there have been some people and like Hunter S. Thompson and stuff like that, where it's like Gonzo and all that. But it
Right.
is
But
interesting. Yeah.
it's the same thing. I mean, for the world that I traveled in, there were people that played instruments, and some of them were, yeah, okay, I'll call them rock stars. But I don't care. I mean, I could be in a room with them, or not just rock stars, but people that would be very famous, and it doesn't matter to me who they are. I don't care if it's Timothy Leary, Dr. Timothy Leary, or any, Joe Satriani or Ozzy
Mm.
Osbourne or Gene Simmons or whatever. I don't care.
Yeah,
Either you're a good conversationalist, you're a nice person, or you're a jerk. And the fact of what you do for a living or how many people know who you are is immaterial to me, because at the end of the day, you wake up in the morning and you still take a shit. And it doesn't bother me or
yeah,
phase me one way or another how much money you have on your gold toilet or not. It doesn't matter. Do you have something to say, and is your work any good? And that's the way it is.
for sure. I totally agree with that as well. And it is something that you kind of, I mean, I've had to learn that in Australia, we don't get a lot of celebrities. And by celebrities, I mean, we don't get a lot of people from abroad coming here.
You
So,
got Emil and the Sniffers.
yeah, we do get him on the snippets. I don't get him on the podcast, but we do get him.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's so funny that now I'm actually curious. I'm like, are there any other Aussie bands that have come onto your radar?
I'm sad to say no.
Okay.
No,
I'll
and
put you on.
there
I'll
may have
put
been.
you on. I'll put you on the
Yeah,
song.
set me up. Send me a playlist.
I know King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard is the other one that's like really big over there.
Oh,
If you
I've actually heard of them. I didn't realize they were from
Australia.
Australia.
Yeah, yeah. Them and Amel are kind of like the two big, I guess, landmark ones. And obviously Tame Impala, but not so
Right.
much rock, but yeah. Who are some of your inspirations then in terms of like photography inspirations?
Oh, photography inspirations. I really liked, the work of Robert Frank, like photojournalists, street photographers. I liked his work a lot. Henri Cartier-Bresson, sort of this street photographer, very informal. Catch the movement as it's going. I like that type of photography a lot.
So you really respond to like natural movement and like the photo
Hmm.
that its own integrity, basically.
Yeah, when I've written about this before. My father was very much into landscape photography, and we would go out to places in California to national parks like Yosemite, and he wanted to take pictures of national parks, and I wanted to take pictures of people. So I never gravitated to the landscape thing. I knew I always wanted to photograph people, but I just loved those you know photojournalistic types of images.
Mm. Yeah, I mean they really do speak volumes as well. Like
Mhm.
it is harder to get that kind of sense of inspiration with landscape for some reason. Like landscape for me relaxes me. I get relaxed when I look out onto a green pasture, but like it doesn't incentivize, that feeling. And I guess if you're already interested in people and you're photographing punk rockers, you know what I mean? You get that extra dose of adrenaline already because they're,
Yeah,
exaggerated people for the most part on stage.
exactly.
That's cool. I read about your "don't look behind you" technique. If
Oh, yes.
is that was there a lot of sort of risk of damaging your gear at the beginning? Because that was before barriers, right? Where you could be like safe.
Even if there are barriers, it doesn't matter. But yeah, there were no barriers, and you don't look behind you is sort of the thing. Like, because as soon as you take your head off of what's in front of you and you turn around and look, someone's going to come off the stage and smack into you, or you're going to see what's going on behind you, and it's going to freak you out. That's the thing.
Yeah.
It's I was at photographing Slayer, earlier in their career in the mid '80s, and I was taking pictures of them, and I just for a second I looked behind me, and all hell was like breaking loose behind me. I'm like, suddenly I lost my nerve. So don't ever look behind you.
I never look
Keep your eyes
behind.
on the prize.
I never look behind me because I'm 6'8", so I'm very tall. And in order for me to get a good view, I have to go in front of shorter people. Not pushing, obviously, but I'll be there early. And so if I look behind me, all I see is a lot of angry faces, or
Oh
people
yeah,
get on my shoulders. So I
six
don't.
foot eight. That's really tall. I'm
Yeah,
5'5", and you're the guy that's always standing in front of me. No matter
yeah.
where
No,
I stand in a club, you're in
but
front of me.
yeah, I mean, I am that guy, historically speaking. But also, like, I think I'm more into like moshes. Like, I'm gonna be at the front if there's a mosh because it's dynamic. It's always moving. If you're short, you get a chance to kind of see the singer. But if it's a standing still gig, I'll try to. We've got some good venues for that actually for tall people. Like the Forum over here, is like really great for that because you can be tall and kind of stand on the wings. So. That's actually really cool. Um, I saw you're a fan. Are you a fan of Love and Rockets, the comic book?
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that comic book series. I forgot about it for a long time because I used to be a very big comic book fan. And then we started getting some guests on, like we got Johnny Ryan, we got Mike Diana, who just had a documentary narrated by Jello, Biafra
Mhm.
recently. I was wondering, are you a big comic book fan?
No, not really. The reason I became affiliated with Love and Rockets were the Jaime and Gilbert Hernandez, their brothers. Their other brother, Ismael, played bass in this punk band from Oxnard, Dr. No.
Oh,
And Dr. No was, got a pretty good name for themselves, but Jaime drew all of every single flyer for every band in Oxnard. I mean, if you look at like old flyers, there's like his artwork was everywhere. He was the guy that drew flyers. He did band logos for Oxnard bands, and
yeah.
but this is before the comic book. And I remember when they started the comic book, and then they got their own fame, and with all their stuff, and then you look at the comic book, and they drew their friends. I mean, they drew the people around them. They gained inspiration from the folks in their immediate vicinity. So that's sort of just the way it worked.
That's crazy. So did you end up like, I mean, did you or your likeness end up directly in the comics?
That's up for debate. I mean, it's people. Did you saw the Facebook post then?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah,
okay, this is where this is going. Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
the picture of Hopi and me. Yeah, that's where I can neither confirm nor you have to ask
That's
Jaime that. I
awesome.
mean,
That's awesome. Yeah, I had no idea that they like started off in that. I mean, it makes sense, right? Because of the comic, but I just didn't put two and two together. But I mean,
yeah, look at if you're a Doctor No fan, look at their logo. Their logo was drawn by Jaime, the Doctor No woman with the scepter. So if you look up
true.
old Doctor No, that was early Jaime.
No shit. I guess
Yeah.
the integration of, I guess, comic and arts and all that stuff, like Raymond Pettibon and all that kind of stuff. Like it's always been
Mhm.
those two scenes kind of colliding. That's awesome. Um, I was curious how I wanted to know, like, how were you treated back then as a photographer at the beginning of that kind of like punk movement over there? How were you sort of how did people respond to you being there with a camera? Had there been previous documentation of this? No, because it was a new scene, right?
Well, it was relatively new. I mean, there weren't a lot of people. I mean, nobody ever reacted negatively, but also I was a little girl. I mean, I was no threat to anybody. I was just there. And, people, it's just my age kind of protected me in a way because everyone always thought I was someone's kid, so I'm there with a camera and, I'm unassuming. I'm not getting in anyone's way. I'm just taking pictures. So nobody ever bothered me. And the interesting part about that is everybody started at square one. I mean, there were people that shot before me. I mean, punk rock started in, LA was started surfacing around 1976 and 77, and I didn't start going to shows until 1980, and I didn't bring a camera until 81. So there were plenty of people running around with cameras before me, but there weren't. It was a community. There weren't a lot of people. It wasn't an oversized event. It was only that when people started to get more well known or more famous and the scene started getting bigger, people's attitudes started changing. But the interesting part about that is I knew everybody and I grew up with them. So I had this extraordinary access to the musicians and their labels because we all knew each other from being kids together and being punk. So it's kind of you're grandfathered into a certain scene because you're there and you have a certain credibility. Again, I don't want anything from you. I'm not a hangers on. I just want to take pictures, and
Yeah,
that's kind of what I just put out there,
that's awesome. And so
and it still works.
with the scene being so vibrant at the time, what made you want to go to Seattle? What year did you go to Seattle?
Oh, I moved to Seattle in September of 1990. Yeah. That's when I moved
So
up here.
was the punk scene kind of dying down a little bit by that point?
Well, it did something different. I'll say that. There was always a pretty vibrant punk scene in Seattle, and I knew that because bands would tour to LA. I mean, to me, it's when I lived in LA, Seattle was like the end of the earth, right? Does Bigfoot live there? I didn't. Do you have electricity yet? I never. But a lot of bands from Seattle would come to LA or San Francisco, and I would go when I go to San Francisco, there'd be bands from Seattle and San Francisco because it was closer, right? The biggest cities were, if you're
Mm.
from Seattle, you'd go to Portland, and you would go
Yeah.
to LA, or excuse me, Portland, San Francisco, then LA. So there was some movement, but in the late 80s, starting in the 90s, grunge started. So these bands that were punk bands, they kind of went through this evolution, and then there's this revolution towards this completely different sound that really caught fire. And just by happened, when I pulled my car into the driveway in September of 1990, I drove into the garage on the ground floor of what was going to be one of the most historic music movements in the 90s. Grunge happened pretty much the day I showed up. I mean, it's just by virtue of, oh my, and it just, it exploded around me as right when I got to Seattle. It was incredible.
Yeah, grunge had such a huge impact on in Australia. I would say grunge has had more of an impact on local bands. Every band that's here sounds like Nirvana still. Every
Yeah.
single band. It's really interesting. Yeah, they're all just huge fans of that. So did you return to LA after that frequently or
No, I still live in Seattle. I've been here for 34 years. But I go to LA a lot. I mean, I have family there. I do business
yeah,
there. I was just there last week. So I still have a lot of connection to LA. And in some respects, I still think of it as my home because I
yeah.
grew up there and I still have a big connection to Los Angeles and to Hollywood and, the places I grew up.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Cool. I saw the like one of my favorite photos, the Jello court photo. You took that, right?
I did.
That's incredible. That yeah, the photo and kind of the vibe and the story behind it, the fact that he was running for mayor, right? That was the
No, actually, that was earlier. This Jello thing was the No More Censorship Defense Fund.
Oh
At the
yeah, with
time in the
Frank
United,
Zappa, right? And all
the
that.
Frank Zappa thing, yeah, where
Oh,
he was doing spoken words with Frank Zappa, and Frank Zappa addressed the United States Senate in these hearings, and he made a recording. It was Frank Zappa and the Mothers of Prevention, was what
so good.
a tie back to the Mothers of Invention. So he did a record, and he and Jello did a spoken word appearances to talk about censorship. And at that time, there was a woman, Tipper Gore. She was the wife of Al Gore, who ultimately became the vice president. And I'm pretty sure that's why he lost the presidential election, because people didn't like his wife. But
Wow.
anyway, so um, Jello Biafra was sued on pornography charges for a poster inside his album Christ, which was a poster of an H.R. Geiger work, and it
I know
was,
the exact one.
it's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And so he got sued, and it wasn't a joke. When you get sued, it's expensive and it's stressful. And, he had to go to court, and he had to pay court fees, and he had to get a lawyer. And I think that he had an ACL, American Civil Liberties lawyer, and a private lawyer. But being called a pornographer and being hauled in front of the court like that is just, it's a big deal. And Biafra and I are friends, and he called me up and he wanted a tie to wear to work. And it was like, okay, I got a dad, he's got ties. Let's, we'll go loan him a tie. And then I thought this is going to be, pretty historic. So I went down to the courtroom with my camera, pretending I work, like, photojournalist in the pool,
Yeah.
taking pictures with all the news cameras of my friend, going to court. So
Wow.
that was a story. And my dad was pissed because he was like the conspiracy theorist. Don't let them photograph you. Don't sign a petition. They have a dossier on you. And I'm like, Dad,
Yeah.
I'm 17, right? I mean, it was sort of interesting, but yeah, that court thing was huge.
Yeah, no, I didn't realize it was from that, and not his like electoral stuff. But of course, like, why would he go to court when he's running? I mean, he would go to court, but not like that. Yeah, I know, because I spoke to Mike Diana. I'm not sure if you're super familiar with his work, but he drew the Hard Boiled comics. No, not Hard
Hmm.
Boiled, Boiled Angel, and so he got persecuted for 3 years for obscenity. So that Jello's name came up in that as well. I
Yeah,
think we're friends as well.
it was a dark time. I mean, eventually, I think Jello's going to kill me if he hears this, but I think it ended in a mistrial. So it wasn't that it was guilty or innocent. It was a hung jury. It was like, it wasn't, there was no, and they did, no determination,
Yeah.
and they didn't push charges again. But I think years later, one of those people might have been the assistant DA, or somebody had apologized to him for doing that. I don't, my memory is starting to fade, but
Wow.
at the time, he was going through some things. So yeah.
Yeah, it's not an easy thing to go through. It's
Mm-mm.
horrible. All for art, right? All for literally
Hmm.
not harming anyone.
Well, it's not just for art. I mean, because H.R. Geiger was the artist, and it was his music. It's the ability to be able to express yourself, and to create music, and for people to tell you what's obscene and what isn't obscene. I mean, the obscenity laws in this country are ridiculous. It's like, what makes a poster by H.R. Geiger, obscene, but a photo of a cop shooting somebody in the head, not obscene. I mean, what is, sex is okay, but violence is not. I mean,
Yeah, yeah,
sex
yeah.
is not okay, but violence is okay. I mean, there's this double standard. And I think, Tipper Gore and her Parents Music Resource Center just really did, people a disservice. It
For
was it
sure.
was pretty ruthless and evil.
Segueing into something else that's ruthless and evil, the state of the US right now is not
You're really
fantastic.
gonna go there? Yeah, lay
We
it
don't
on
have to,
me.
but I did think it was cool. I read an article from like 2017 regarding when Trump first got in office that I think you did.
Hmm.
And it was a great read, especially now because of, what's just happened
Oh,
again.
The Huffington Post
The
article.
Huffington Post
Oh
one.
yeah, I mean, and I'm going back. I thought, when dipshit got. I'm sorry, I'm not supposed to say
No,
that.
no, no. I've been swearing the whole time. We always swear.
When he got elected, I went through this whole thing like reclaiming, my family's name.
I
I don't know
saw.
if and I think I still have that account open on Facebook. My private account is Alison Braunstein, and I thought that it's with all the hatred and everything. I'm gonna reclaim, the name that my parents, or excuse me, my father shortened when he came back from World War II. I'm going to reclaim that, and I think it's even more prescient now when there's so much amount of anti-Semitism
Yeah.
and hatred, Jew hatred.
No, for sure. I'm Jewish as well, and so when I read that you put your name back, my last name is Blitzman, but it's like Ukraine, Polish, Jew.
Hmm.
Went to Argentina and then here, but like, yeah, it was really kind of like a profound statement to see you like actually put it back because yeah, like a lot of Jews like historically changed their last names, out of shame or out of fear. Or whatever, like in my family tree, I don't know which names are real, which names aren't because of crossing a border and having to, change it.
Well, yeah,
So,
exactly. And there's a lot of that in the United States. There's a couple of things that happen. A lot of people, not just of Jewish descent, but anybody, a lot of people that had non-Anglo-Saxon sounding names got
yeah,
new names when they came through Ellis Island, which was the place where, when you were migrating to the United States on the East Coast, you'd go through this to Ellis Island, and the guy checking you in, you'd say your name, and if you said, oh, my name is Schwarzkopf. He'd go, oh, short, and
yeah,
they'd anglicize your name. And, that was one way a lot of people got names that were shorter. Another one is just assimilation. My grandfather went through, walked into Ellis Island as Carlo Marino and walked out Charles Marine. I'm like, what the heck just happened here? So they want to be American. They want to be, fit in. And, what happens is in their course of fitting in, they lose their language. My grandparents, they lost their language. They spoke Yiddish. And when, my dad was born and my mom was born, their parents spoke Yiddish, but they didn't teach it to me. I had to figure it out when they would talk about me and I didn't understand it. But there was this pervasive thinking that we leave this behind us and we want you to be as American as possible. And when people do that, not just in my world, but all across the earth, when people migrate somewhere and they lose, because they want to take on the culture of their country, their adopted country, they lose connection to their old country on purpose. And I think that's does a disservice to children, where they
for
don't
sure.
learn the language
I
and the
agree. I mean,
customs.
I'm from Argentina. I was born there, and my folks taught me Spanish, which is my first language, thankfully, and I was able to keep that. But there's not a lot of people. There are a lot of people from South America here, but there's not a lot of people in the in my area when I grew up. There wasn't a lot of Spanish speakers, and then in the art scene, there's not a lot of Spanish speakers either. So when you do meet someone who's because a lot of people are coming here to work, so they don't have time to be practicing art. I've found. But yeah, when you find somebody who speaks your language, it's just like, oh shit, and you get to
You know,
reconnect
if
with that culture.
if you come to LA, Spanish is almost a majority language, but it isn't.
Yeah,
Argent, Mexican Spanish sounds different than Argentine Spanish,
yeah,
and Argent when I'm listening to someone who's speaking, native Argentine, they're speaking. It's very fast, and
yeah,
I don't speak very Spanish very well, but I can understand it. And
mhm.
I find myself like a despacio, por favor. I have
Yeah,
to
yeah,
like
yeah.
slow it down, man.
No, I really do. I've been to the States a bit, but I haven't spent enough time there to really like practice my Spanish over there. But yeah, my Castellano, my Argentinian Spanish is very quick. It's a very quick language, so I've had to learn to slow down. Actually, you learn two things being like Hispanic here in Australia is you slow down, take a breath, and then to lower your voice because we're very upfront and we're very fiery, and
Wouldn't know anything about that.
Australians are, yeah, Australians aren't like that at all. So it's a very big culture shock. But yeah, like the reason I brought this up is because I thought it was a fantastic article, and I recommend anyone listening to this to read that article, especially now because I read that article as soon as Musk took to the podium, and that was a complete shit show, and that was just disgusting. And yeah, like I actually can't believe it's 2025. It feels like such.
Oh, I'm I'm on a news diet, which is unfortunate because for years I'm a political junkie. I was on top of the news, and now it's like my husband and I are just we're on a news diet. I have the New York Times puzzles that I'm doing every day.
Yeah,
When I have the urge to go pick up something, it's like I'll go to the New York Times and like go to the puzzles and start doing word puzzles because I don't want to know. I mean,
yeah,
every day, like when the first time in the administration was every day it was, what did he say now? What did he do now? And I'm now looking at another 4 years of that, of us being the laughing stock of the planet for 4 years. I mean,
yeah.
to Australia and the rest of the world, I didn't do this. Wasn't me.
You heard it here first, everybody. Yeah, I mean,
Wasn't me, everyone.
yeah, yeah. No, well, thank you for clearing that up.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely.
yeah, no. Well, yeah, moving away from that, because I do find that I've been speaking to a lot of people from LA, New York, like a lot of Americans. I think mostly it's been Americans on this season. And I think the beauty of this show is not having to have you guys delve into what you already are experiencing. So maybe getting away from that a little bit. Um,
There's a real fear here, and the fear is I'm tempering what I do now. My father, when he said to me, they have a dossier on you, and he never said who they were. And I'm going to protest, and I'm a punk rocker. And he told me, because he was about the red baiting and the whole American anti-communism thing, where a lot of Jewish people got lumped into the House Select Committee on Un-American Activities, which was a stain on our history. And now I see what he's saying, so I find myself holding back, not engaging with these people,
mm,
because as a public figure, that I don't want someone to show up at my door. You remember, I don't know how much the U.S. news you read, but there was some schmuck, that heard that. I'm going to laugh saying out this loud, but Hillary Clinton is running a child trafficking ring out of a
uh,
pizza place. Okay.
yeah, I
Now
know.
say
They
that
call it
out loud.
Pizzagate here. Yeah.
Pizzagate. Say that out loud and look in the mirror while you're saying that. If you don't laugh at yourself, you're an idiot.
Yeah.
And this guy gets in his car with a gun, drives across state lines to show up at a pizza place to save the kids. I mean, so here's an idiot who saw something on the internet, thought it must be true, got in his car and entered into the real world and committed a real crime by
Yeah.
terrorizing these people at this real brick and mortar establishment. So
Yeah.
I feel strongly that I have to watch what I say or do, because I don't want some schmuck, coming to my house and going, "Are you the one who wrote this?" And hold up,
Yeah. Yeah.
my
Yeah.
razor blades and aspirin interview or something.
Yeah, yeah, in Australia, it's weird. You can say a lot of shit and get away with it because we don't have like our gun laws are quite strong. Like we don't really have guns, so you can kind of talk whatever you
But
want.
how you got to that, though, I mean, I
Mm.
remember what the
Yep.
lead up to. You didn't always have strong
No,
gun
we
laws.
didn't.
There was some horrific crimes that happened that, caused those gun laws to come into fruition. So
For
you
sure.
did the right thing. We went the opposite. We're going to ban TikTok, but yet assault weapons aren't banned. I don't. It's this back ass way of thinking. You shoot children in a preschool, and you're worried about the gun. You're worried about someone taking your guns away. I mean, it's
Oh,
it's
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 insane.
incredibly,
Absolutely
it's stupid.
backwards. But anyway, moving away from all that, in a lighter note, talk to me about the Punk Rock Museum in Las Vegas.
Oh yeah. What do you want to know?
So you're the founder of that, yeah?
No, wait, I'm one of a team of people that were founders. There's but probably I'm trying to count how many faces are on. There's about 10 founders or whatever. Or, there's a few of us that were a group of people that founded the Punk Rock Museum, and I just happen to be one of them. Fat Mike Burkett recruited me because he wanted. There's a specific photo that he wanted, you know, for held prominently in the museum that wasn't mine, and he wanted me to procure this from another photographer, and I'm like,
What?
okay,
Why is
so
this so he got you to
well,
get the
it's it,
photo?
well, he and I are friends, and I said, I'll do this if you return my negatives for NoFX's first album that you returned after you used them. So it was an Ed Culver photo, and it's behind when you walk into the Punk Rock Museum. There's a giant photo of a guy, diving into the audience, flipping into the audience, and he wanted like build a whole museum around this photo. But the Punk Rock Museum, we started work on that right before COVID, and it was this really great way, for me to get through this pandemic, was meeting with the team weekly about, what was going to be in there. And, Mike buying a space out in Las Vegas of all places, to house the museum. We're just like, what? And that was kind of interesting, but it's a great space. I had my fears as we were planning this, thinking like, I hope this doesn't look like my teenage bedroom when I walk in here, of what the exhibits were going to look like. And I went there for the opening, and it was fantastic. Mike said something really great. He says, no one leaves here upset. Everybody has a smile on their face when they leave here. And I thought about that for a minute, and that was just really great sentiment. You go there, you have fun, it's a positive experience, and you should definitely check it out. We can argue I can argue with anybody about what band is there, what band isn't there, what band should be there, whether
Yeah.
or not metal should be in there, whether or not Seattle should be properly represented. I mean, I can argue till I'm blue in the face, but at the end of the day, it makes people smile.
Mm. Yeah, that's great. Is there anything else really like that over there?
No, I mean in Vegas, no. I mean there was another project in Los Angeles, of the same name that never really took off.
Mm.
But there's, probably, you know, ephemera spread around, but to put it together in the way that the museum has, with the collections out, and they have the celebrity tour guides, and the shows in the parking lot. Vandals played in the parking lot.
Awesome.
It's just a great space, and if you're in Las Vegas, you should go.
For sure. I've been in Las Vegas once in my life and I loved it actually. But I didn't yeah, that didn't exist. I would have gone in like 2018 or something like that.
Mhm.
So before that. I want to ask you about the act of restoring photos. Uh because I do find it so interesting. I think a lot of people are very, I don't know if purist is the right word, but they're very into just like whatever they took at the time, however it looks is how it looks now. But you have a different approach, right, to that?
Well, I mean, I have that approach. It's more or less, it's complicated. So I spent years scanning my archives, and, they're the photos, some of the famous photos that people have seen. And then as I'm looking at like stuff, I thought there's what we would call in the movies B-roll, a photo that's off, just a little bit. You would never share it because as a professional photographer, it's out of focus or something, and when I started using some advanced editing software to sharpen stuff or to bring out details, I'm able to share photos for free that people would never see. And what I have, there's still a code of ethics that I have. I'm not inventing something that isn't there. I'm not doing things to people's faces. I'm bringing out the detail that's
Yeah.
already there. And I'm not drawing makeup on them or making them thinner or fatter or putting a hat on them. Those
Yeah,
the
yeah,
things
yeah.
that people on their phone with Facetune, doing all kinds of
Yeah,
bizarre
yeah, yeah,
things.
yeah.
It's the same photo, but I may have sharpened it or reduced some of the grain so you can see somebody's face. That's all I'm doing. I'm not recreating a photograph. I mean, in years ago in the dark room, people would say, I'll burn that down. If there was like a hand in the picture, I'd go in the dark room and I'd burn it down to black where you couldn't see it. Or if there's detail in a shadow, you would dodge the shadow to bring something out. These are all done with your hands in a manual process in the dark room. And no one would ever argue that dodging and burning or cropping a photo is somehow wrong, and now we're in the 21st century. If I can sharpen a photo that you would never see, that it would never get shared,
Yeah.
that the world wouldn't, ever experience from a person who's no longer here. I'm thinking of the stuff I did of Motorhead. I think it's great. It gives the fans the ability to see pictures they've never seen before. And in another life, I wouldn't have been able to share them because quite frankly, they sucked. And now they're now at least they're shareable on social media. So if people don't like it, they can fuck off,
Now we're getting into the swearing.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. It's like, I could choose not to share it,
Mm.
and it's not like I'm misrepresenting the work. I'll tell you when I do it. I said I'm pretty open when I say
No,
that I've spent 6 hours restoring a photo of Jeff Hanneman.
yeah, no, it's great, and I can tell like that code of ethics that you talk about is so important and such a different distinction from like not having that, because I didn't even know about neural filters, till I saw you post about it, and I literally had to Google what that was. I was like, generating new pixels in photos, like what the hell?
Yeah, the neural filters on Photoshop. If anyone from Adobe is listening, you guys suck. I mean, it's so culturally biased. I
Well, that's what
swear.
I saw. Yeah,
I was when I was trying to sharpen something up of Bad Brains, it like changed their ethnicity, and I'm like, oh my god, this is awful. I started a folder on neural filter disasters, and eventually I might just send it back to Adobe, going, you good with this? And that's why in that post that I said that the neural filters work very very little. I mean, they're almost useless, but they're fun. I'll give it a try, and every once in a
yeah.
while something will go, oh, that's all right. But most of the time it's like, I smack my head.
Yeah, no, for sure. I saw your photo of Sir Mix-a-Lot, and
Uh-huh.
that's a portrait photo, right, that you took at his
Mhm.
house?
Yeah, at his house in Black Diamond, Washington. Yeah.
Wow. Do you do that a lot as well? The
I
portrait?
do. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was an assignment for his record label, Nasty Nick's Records at the time, which was a Seattle label. They sent me out to his house to do some pictures of him. So I shot photos of him by his cars.
And what's your process for getting the person you're photographing to chill out and relax and act natural?
Me acting, I'm a very self-deprecating person, and I just have a conversation with people and, just kind of reach them where they are. It's not a science, it's an art. I mean, when I get a band, especially a heavy metal band in the studio, and I go to take their picture, they line up like little cordwoods, like, like, I'm like, what are you guys doing? You're not logs stacked on each other. We're gonna move you around. We're gonna, do something different. Just, lighten up, have a beer, you know.
Yeah, I know I've spoken to a few photographers here on the show. One actually on this podcast, and yeah, he was talking about like getting music out and all that kind of stuff. Do you do the same kind of thing?
Music, like getting music, like what do you
Like playing
mean?
music while you take
No,
photos?
sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. I mean, a lot
Yeah.
of times if I'm doing stuff, it's on site, so you
Mhm.
can't play music. It's if I'm on location. Most of my stuff, since I haven't had a studio in 25 years, so most of the time I'm just out, and I prefer location. I think it just, a little bit
Adds
more interesting.
character for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah. And
yeah.
who are some other notable people that you've taken portraits of?
Other people? Well, there's a lot of bands in there. I mean, I've done Diane Shore. She's a jazz musician. I've got photos of Sanctuary heavy metal band. I've got um, photos of Bitter End, Nevermore. Just a lot of Dark Angel. Just a lot. Mostly the metal stuff was more portrait and studio focused.
For sure, that's awesome. Um, I was also curious. I saw a photo of you with Michael Berryman from the
Oh
Hills
yeah,
United. Are you a big
Yeah,
horror movie fan?
I am. I went. I'm guilty. I shot that at HorrorCon. Yeah,
Ah,
yeah.
true. And what is some of your favorite horror movies?
Oh my God. I have to think about that for a minute because wait, hold on. I'm gonna go grab a special guest.
All right.
Probably won't do this, but hey Ben, what's our favorite horror movie? Yeah, that we've seen that scared us. What was the one with the hand? The Talk to Me. Talk to me.
Talk to me. The New Zealand movie.
Yeah, that's
Ah.
yeah. It's the guy the podcast I'm on. He's from Australia, so this is Talk to Me is a
Yeah, it's
New
kind of the
Zealand
same
film.
thing, kind of.
But there was both. Hounds of Love. Yeah, you guys, Aussies and New Zealand, you guys win it. The next one was Hounds of Love.
Hounds of Love. I don't think I've heard of Hounds of Love before.
You got to go watch it. It's not it's a psychological thriller.
Yeah,
The movies I'm not a gore fest person,
yeah,
and because I've seen a lot of horror movies, it takes a lot for me to go ah. So like movie like Talk to Me is not a gory movie, but
yeah.
it's kind of freaky. Hounds of Love was just like, are you kidding me? I mean, it was just it's like that psychological thriller that
Yeah, I'm the
gets it.
same as well. Like I used to be a horror buff, and then I stopped for about 10 years because I used to watch all this shit when I was like 15, and then I had to stop. And then I watched my first horror movie recently, a movie called Creep from Canada, I think, or something like that.
Hmm.
That was like a psychological horror.
Yeah.
But then like they've got like The Substance out now, and I'm like, nah, not for me. Like I'm not watching that shit because apparently it's like really graphic and really gory, and I'm
Yeah,
like,
I don't like body horror.
no, I'm not into that either.
That's not my thing. I like it to get under my skin and make me uncomfortable, but not and it's much harder to do that. Like to me, gratuitous violence and gore is easy. It's easy, to get a jump scare out of somebody, but to really have them walk away going, ah,
Yeah.
that's that like when we finished Talk to Me, Ben and I looked at each other like, what did we just watch? I mean, it was, what just happened?
Yeah, for sure. It's a different kind of reaction. I can only relate it to like in punk rock. Like there's things that you can do which are gonna get an immediate kind of like shock jock reaction out of people. And then there's more psychological, artsy kind of things you can do as well to
Hmm.
really make them leave thinking, wow, that was like a unique and special and like strange
Hmm.
experience as well. That's awesome. Um, Closing off, and thank you for chatting to me for the last 50 minutes. It's been awesome. Tell me about your book In the Pit, and are there going to be any more books from you?
Um, I've got two books out. I've got In the Pit, which is my punk volume, and I've also got In the Pit, Shot in the Dark, which is my metal volume.
Yeah,
So I've got two volumes, one punk, one metal. And in the metal book is interesting because I've also got crossover, and there's some bands that are featured in both books, but at different parts of their career, which is
right.
interesting. I think I'm done. I'm going to be contributing to some other books, projects that other people are putting out. But right now, I'm focusing on some other projects. I'm doing a couple of box sets of different things. I'm not going to, say too much because I'm still working on it. But
Yeah, yeah,
what I want to do is for the fans, I'm taking some specific bands that would be iconic, and I'm doing a photographic box set where it would feature maybe 8 to 10 photographs, and a story of like how I shot the picture, what I felt at the time, and just have some text to go along with these fine art prints that you can then frame. So I'm going to be focusing a little bit more on some of that, is instead of books are fun. They don't make a lot of money and they're really time consuming.
yeah,
To put out a book, edit the book, print the book, it's takes a lot out for very little, payback, literally very little payback. So
yeah,
I'm gonna, focus on my, uh, additions a little bit more in this coming year.
for sure. I'll try to be the next Australian to order a few over here. because I'm a big collector of all things punk and just books in general, which are
Oh, cool.
books are really expensive here. Especially art books, like really, really good looking books at
Yeah,
$200,
that
200.
that's the other thing. My books are really high quality. They're not fanzines. I wanted a nice book where people could have nice photos and a nice book, and they're expensive. They're not cheap to produce and not cheap to ship. And
No.
there's a diminishing return. So and people are very cost conscious, especially here in the United States with the election. I think people are just going to retreat into themselves. It's going to be very interesting 4 years about how people spend their money, because it's the United States is now an oligarchy. Well, maybe you can argue it's been an oligarchy for a long time, but
Mm.
it's literally, when you have titans of tech standing in front of the United States cabinet picks at an inauguration, that pretty much
Yep.
tells you everything you need to know. Nazi salutes notwithstanding.
No, I actually watched I would consider it a horror movie, though it's not supposed to be, The Apprentice. I watched that the day before.
Oh, yeah, I
That's a
can't. I just
disgusting
can't.
movie. That's a horrible
we
movie.
we spent 4 years not listening to his voice. Anytime he would come on the news, we would turn the news off. Or if I'd be scrolling my feed and his voice would come up from some news story, my husband would go, what's that? And I like click. So we're definitely putting our, like an emu in the sand. I'm gonna go like stick my head somewhere and just let the dust settle, and I'll come out in 4 years and hopefully we're all still alive. And
But with I usually ask people to like, plug something, but I was actually wondering, are there any words of hope that that you want to kind of close the show of? Anything you might recommend people do in these times?
yeah, I do actually. Put your fucking phone down and go for a walk. I mean, and the reason
Agreed.
why I say that is, the news diet that I've been on, it's been really sort of uplifting to just go for a walk, go to the park, sit down, listen to the birds, look at as my husband would say, truth and beauty. The other night outside our kitchen window, there was a great sunset. Put down the screen, go outside, and take in what little is left of this planet. That's all I have to say. And just put put down, social media is poison. Put it down.
I agree completely with what you're saying. And it sucks that, like we have to use it to promote what we do,
Yeah,
but
the irony doesn't escape me, but yes, I
no,
promote
but
my photography on social media. But what
yeah,
I'm
but
not doing is I'm not telling people to inject bleach into my veins. So there you go.
well, yeah, yeah, for sure. I really think it is important to just go out and get away from it, especially because, like, obviously, politics side of it is depressing. Reading the news every day is depressing. But also just being on social media in general is anxiety inducing and
Hmm.
stressful. So being able to just disconnect from messages, disconnect from all that, and just engage in humanity, like you said, what little we have left, we have very little, but we still
Yeah,
have each other. So
yeah.
that's
That's my words of hope. Put down your phone and go outside. Yeah.
awesome. Well, thank you, Alison, for this chat. It's been so
Thank
awesome.
you.
And I
All
hope
right.
you
When is
enjoy.
it gonna? Let me know when it airs, and I'll plug it for you.
Awesome. We'll do. I'll animate a segment as well for it too.
Cool. Thanks a lot. Talk to you later.